All right, all right, all right. Not to copy Matthew McConaughey, but we are living right tonight. It is another Wednesday night. It is time for Conversations with Cougars, and I am so pleased to have one of my childhood friends and teammates, high school friend and teammate with us tonight, Tim Bright. Tim, thank you for making some time for us tonight. It's so good to see you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Bernard. Thank you for doing this. It's like I told you earlier, it's keeping a lot of memories alive for a lot of us.
It is, and that's part of the purpose of this. It's to help preserve the oral history, at least, of our high school's football program and so many other great memories. And one of the really fun things for me as we go through the journey of each person who I get to have a conversation with is just laughs and just great memories we get to share. And I know that tonight we're going to have a whole bunch. But Tim, before we start heading down that road, tell folks a little bit about yourself now and your wonderful family. What's going on with your current world?
Well, married, have 4 children, have 3 boys and a girl. Girl is the youngest. She's going to school in Troy. The boys have 2 in the military, 2 serving in the military. One chose the working life ahead of school, which was fine. He wasn't cut out for school. Wasn't cut out for much of high school, actually. But anyway, long story short, been married to the same lady now for going on 13 years. And this is my second wife. My first wife passed away when I was about 34 years old, 35 years old, from cancer. Met this lady, which I knew her, but hadn't seen her in a long time, but we became friends again. And next thing you know, we're married and got a combined family, which is awesome. Love the kids, got 3 great grandchildren and a 4th one on the way.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's major. But outside of that, I retired 2 years ago. Stayed retired about 2 weeks, and the county school system called and wanted me to go to work with them, and I went to work with those guys, and had been there 5 months to the day almost, and was diagnosed with squamous cell carcinoma, which is head and neck cancer. Been fighting that for the last 2 years. Still not where I want to be as far as my strength and agility and health, but I'm working on that every day. So I'm still retired now. I decided that it was best for me just to go ahead and step away from that position with the school system and concentrate on my health and my family. And that's what I'm doing. And other than that, man, just living life and loving every day that I'm here.
Well, we're so glad you've got some time with us tonight, Tim, and continued good health and continued just moving forward with your journey and enjoying what you do each day. And one of the things that I know that you've always loved since you were a little kid, one of the common things that you and I share is the love of baseball.
Amen.
And we had many fun years as youth, playing on many awesome little league teams out at Ward 4, at Westgate, all-star games, awesome memories, and then on to high school as well. And we even played a year of high school football together. Right. We were on the baby Cougars the fall of 1982, and I posted the team picture of about 75 fresh-faced ninth graders on that team, and some characters, some characters on that team, but just some really, really fun memories. And I want to say some of my earliest memories with you probably goes back to middle school, or even beyond, before that, elementary school with baseball. But we also went to Girard and we got to play on Girard's football team together. And let's start there. That was such a we're going way back.
Yeah, we are.
Some of the things, Tim, that I remember, we had those like almost powder blue Girard jerseys with the red. We were the Rebels. And I don't know if they're still called the Rebels. Who knows? Schools change names now to be appropriate for society. But I remember the field had rocks and glass and no grass, and it kind of sloped. And you could see, one of the things I really didn't like is you could see the Azalea Club pool right across the street and all the kids having fun. Did any of that bring back any memories for you?
Yes, it does. Those rocks were they were awful. It didn't matter where you were at on that field. we were going to find the rocks no matter what. And somehow or another, the rocks always made it into the area we were practicing. And I think that may have been by design. I'm not sure. But yes, that was some great days. I don't know if you remember, you're talking about those jerseys. We thought we were the coolest cats in town with those jerseys because we only school that had new jerseys other than Honeysuckle and Beverly, who were new schools at that time. But we had those jerseys and they looked like the Houston Oilers jerseys, and we thought we were just the stuff in Dothan. You know, we had
That's exactly right. And Tim, we had, let's see, we had Mr. Shakespeare was one of our coaches. We had Ben Lyons as one of our coaches. I want to say maybe Coach Ferris came later. I can't, Mike Ferris.
Yeah,
We had 4. What about was Eugene Singletary, or was he with us too?
and then he went out, and then he followed us over to Northview later.
Right, he sure did, and gosh, that just takes me back 7th and 8th grade. Just some fun times, and little. I guess we knew back then, but some of the guys we competed against in Little League, as well as when we were in middle school, became our classmates at high school. And gosh, some of the things, you know, when you look at a photo, like a team photo, I posted a bunch of them of us over the years, and you look at all the faces, and just things just start to come back. And one of the things that always stuck with me is you played catcher for many years. But the most feared thing that I loved being a teammate of yours that struck the real fear in the opponents is you were a very good batter. And it didn't matter. One of the things I know you know about this is your strike zone was the shoes all the way up to the tops. But staying with that Little League and elementary years, we're going to get to Northview in a few minutes. But what was it about playing Little League baseball that you so enjoyed in Dothan during those early years?
It was just being with everybody and having a great time. It seemed like this when baseball season was over, it was just like the summer was doomed at that point. There was nothing else to do. Dothan's a small town. There's nothing to do anyway. So baseball kept me out of trouble. Some summers, and for the most part. But just being with everybody and hanging out at the ball fields, because I mean we were there all the time. I mean even on Saturdays and Sundays, a group of us would end up at Westgate, you know, playing home run derby or choosing sides and playing each other, you know, closing off part of the field and things like that.
No, you're so right about, and we're going to sound like 2 old men, but it was simpler times. It was. We didn't have to deal with the internet. We didn't have to deal with cars and phones and all of that stuff back then. We just found fun ways to entertain ourselves. And most of the time it was playing sports and just competing and goofing and having fun. But in Little League, I so remember, you know, some of the teams. It was Circle City, Texaco, and Solomon Motors, and Hall's Cabinet. I mean, there's so many of those. But, you know, when we were 10, 11, and 12 competing against Rob Tibbs and Jonathan Coe and some of those guys, those were World Series games for us. And they were so competitive. And I think that's what brought out the best in us, just the ability to compete every day.
You know, I didn't know it at the time, and Coach Parrish instilled this in me when I got over to the Northview. You know, you're only as good as your competition, and they're going to either make you or break you. They're either going to make you really, really good, or you're just not going to bring it to the table. And if you don't bring it to the table, you know, what fun is it to be there? And that was just, all of us had that same attitude. We're going to do the best we can at everything we do. And our whole group, that whole area, I say area, everybody in that area, in that league at that time, were extremely competitive and still are to this day. As far as I know, most of the guys I see, you know, there's still a little bit of competitive spirit in all of us.
I think that's so right. That's just all part of enjoying life. That's the competition, just being, whether you're athletic or you just have that inner drive and other things that you do in your life. Competition drives you to be better. Competition, I think, does bring out the best in you. It can bring out the worst in you as well. And you don't want to show that too much. But, you know, as we progressed out of middle school and came over to the high school, did you know that you wanted to play football that freshman? Did you have that in your mind? Did you know you wanted to play baseball? Or how did that evolve coming out of middle school, going to the high school?
Well, it was strange. I got a call from Coach Parrish one day. After baseball had finished for that summer, between the 8th and 9th grade year, got a call from Coach Parrish, and he said, "Boy," he said, "I'm coming to get you Monday morning. You be waiting for me at 7:30. I'm coming to get you." And I couldn't tell him no. I mean, it was just, you didn't tell him no. Yeah. And I'll never forget, there was about 6 of us piled up in the back of his truck, which, you know, people were going to have a heart attack to hear this today. We'd pile up in the back of his truck. He'd pick me up on the circle. I'd walk down to the circle from my house. He'd pick me up on his truck, and there was 5 or 6 of us in the back of that truck going to Northview every day for summer workouts.
That's right.
And I think you were part of that group as well. I can't remember for sure. I know Clay Pelham was in that group.
He was. He sure was. And I want to say maybe Brian Wilkinson.
He was.
And gosh, there's so many names. And we ended up with that group of, I'm thinking it was between 60 and 70 players that started out. There were almost 20 of us who made it all the way through our senior year. And frankly, that's a pretty good percentage when you compare the way that Northview was over the years. We had a huge class, some great athletes that came through our freshman year, and we had a really good season. I know we won more games than we lost, but even before we got to that, Tim, those summer workouts is when the team built its chemistry. Not everybody knew each other. We're coming from 3 or 4 different middle schools at the time, and some guys moving in from out of city. And we just all came together. But Coach Parrish, Johnson, Tribute, all those Cleveland, all those coaches just knew how to bring us together. And I hated it then. I hate it now, and I've hated it every day in between. But I don't like working out with weights, and it was probably pretty evident early on. But it was a necessary evil for many purposes. How did you enjoy working out with weights and all of that stuff? Do you do it now?
Not even a little bit. I don't even do it now. I probably need to do it now. That would probably help me get some of my energy level back and some of my agility back. But it's there again. Coach Parrish said this is what we were going to do, and that's what we did. And you didn't dispute Coach Parrish. I mean, and we didn't even know Coach Tribb and Coach Cleveland at the time, because we were only there. It was Coach Parrish and sometimes Coach Hicks. And Coach Hicks I was even more afraid of him than I was Coach Parrish by far. I thought Coach Hicks was going to kill us. And
well, I got news for you. Coach Hicks just signed on and joined our talk. Thank you, Coach. We got Chris Parrish has just signed on. We got stadium announcer Mike too, and there's a few other folks. So thank you for joining me. And Tim Bright, one of my teammates and childhood friends and teammate for many, many years. And we're talking about 9th grade. This is the summer of '82. Gosh, that was a long time ago. And we're just getting indoctrinated, if you will, into the Northview 9th grade football program with those dreaded summer workouts. And Tim, we had the pleasure, as many classes did, of starting or working out and doing our practices down in the bowl or down in the pit, whatever you want to call it. And I saw you roll your eyes because you know where I'm going with this. It's where no breeze ever found itself. Again, very little grass, but we also had the added bonus of getting to run up and down the side of the hill. How horrible was that?
The most dreaded thing I've ever done in my entire life. I have worked hard doing things that were not near as hard as that was on me. There was no, like I said, no wind, nothing but a dust bowl. There was no sprinkler system down there. There was no water. To get water, we had to run the top of the hill and go, if we were lucky, go to the field house, and maybe the water was left on by the varsity.
Yeah.
If we were lucky.
And that was also back during the time when water was not nearly as pushed like it is. I guess the sports science has evolved over the last 4 decades to now it's good for you. But I can remember getting salt tablets to replace the salt you've lost. How horrible. But anyway, that's just our old men's story from back in the time. Now, that freshman year, Tim, where did you start working out position-wise? Where did they want you to play, and how did that develop for you?
I actually started out working at quarterback. I think you and I were swapping those duties there at the time. And then I played some linebacker on defense. But, and there again, it's like you were talking about earlier, we played wherever they put us. We didn't ask questions. We were so scared to death because we didn't know what we were walking into. We were used to each other, but we weren't used to some of the other people that we were now teammates with. And we definitely weren't used to the coaches. They had a little different coaching style than what we had prior to that. And they were tough. I mean, but they were good for us. They made us what we are today.
Oh, absolutely. That's where I was going to head with this. I guess as a side note, I was, I guess, equally relieved that they moved you to linebacker, but I did not like the fact that, and I want to remember, didn't you wear a neck roll when you played?
I did.
And guys, Tim might have been able to throw the ball 50 yards down the field, but he could also stick you as hard as anybody on that defense. And coach didn't, at those early weeks of practices, everybody was fair game. There was no such thing as a red shirt on the quarterback, don't hit the quarterback or whatever. You had to earn your keep, and that's how you did it. You had to show that you weren't scared of putting your head in there. And I just remember those scrimmages when I actually was a little relieved when we got to scrimmage, because that meant we were not doing all those dreaded drills. That meant we were not doing, gosh, I can't even remember all of them, but even the backs, the quarterbacks, even the kickers had to participate in everything because they were just trying to figure out where we all fit at that time. But going to the games were so much even more of, not a relief. You obviously you look forward to competing against other teams, but you no longer had to compete against your own teammates where you're hitting heads for weeks.
I'll never forget Cassie Butler lit me up. I didn't know Cassie that well.
Yeah.
Like Cassie Butler, I come around, we were running some kind of drill, and that's when I was still swapping out duties with you at quarterback.
Yeah.
Ran around that end, and there was Cassie, and he hit me so hard, Bernard, I thought I had lost my teeth and everything that was in between. Mm-hmm. And he got up and he looked down at me with only the look that Cassie can give you, that great big smile on his face. And he said, "Come on, let's go. We got more to do." I was like, "Oh, God, he's going to kill me again."
It was guys like Cassie. I remember Don Jordan could hit hard. Gosh, there was so many other guys, and they'll come to mind in a few minutes. But some of those guys could hit you so hard they'd make you change religions, or maybe quit religion.
Yeah, Lonnie Mathis was one of those.
Oh, Lonnie could light you up too, absolutely. But you know, Tim, we went through those first couple of weeks of the workouts and then the practices and scrimmages. But what do you remember, or if you remember, about starting school in ninth grade? I have some vivid memories, but I want to hear what you recall about starting school. And I want to start with this. How did you get to school in ninth grade?
In ninth grade, I rode with Lynn Granger. I don't know if you remember Lynn Granger or not. Rode with Lynn Granger to school in the ninth grade. It's funny that you talk about this because I was just talking to somebody else about it not too long. I think I was telling my wife about it. We rode to school together, and he had a little Chevette, and there was 5 of us in that Chevette riding to school together. Yeah, and the Chevette wasn't made for maybe 4 people at the most.
Yeah,
and that was on, and you know, there was me and Gary Oppert and Lynn. And I want to say Troy Jones and somebody else. We all rode together with him to school.
All right, now wait a second. It either had to have been Black Sabbath, Leonard Skinner, Judas Priest. You got to tell me who's on the radio. Who y'all?
I wish I could remember. I can't remember. I would love to remember that. That would be an awesome memory, but I can't remember. I know we didn't do a lot of talking. None of us were morning people, so we didn't do a lot of discussing anything.
Yeah.
But I was scared to death. I was scared to death my first day of ninth grade. I thought, oh, the whole world's going to come to an end today. This is it. You know, little did I realize I knew most of the people that I would form a relationship with that would last already prior to school even starting. And that was the guys on the football team. Some of the band members that we had met over the summer. You know, the coaches, we knew those guys. We knew those coaches. We knew them better than we knew some of our original friends from elementary school.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was so afraid. I guess because it was such a big school. And
well, it was, Tim. It was, you go from your middle school, which is a normal nondescript building. The Girard Elementary and Girard Middle School been there for decades. You're comfortable with that. You go over to Northview and it's like a junior college campus. It's gigantic. And you're so right. Those first days, it's just so overwhelming. And it's, how do I know where my class is? I don't remember having, and maybe we did, I just don't remember this part, a preview day, like at the end of 8th grade or before school started 9th grade, where you come over and you get at least a little preview of the campus. I know they do that. They've done that for decades now, but I don't remember doing that. But I was also very thankful for the teammates that I did recognize. Yeah. At least the 9th graders. I didn't know many of the upperclassmen. But you're so right. those first days of transitioning up to high school can be quite intimidating.
Most
Uh,
definitely.
but Tim, I want to tell you, talk about music. You may have seen what I posted. In 10th grade, I had the coolest ride. I was riding with Blake Hall. Remember, Blake had that silver, I think it was a 240Z or a 260Z. Well, you could hear him before you saw him because he only played one song the whole year. Jesse's Girl by Rick Springfield. We didn't talk by the time I got into his car, the 10-minute drive. That's all we heard. It's just on repeat. I still don't like that song. I still cannot stand that song. But we didn't talk, but it was so loud because he had extra speakers in the back. But,
Yeah,
but I was cool. But I was cool. That's what it was important.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. That was the thing right there. That made the ride all the better because when you got to school, you were already one of the cool guys.
That's right. Not to mention the headache I had for the rest of the day. But let's go back to ninth grade and that transition through, the first weeks, and we're playing football and we get to wear our jerseys on the game days, and that's cool. What are some of your early recollections of just being in school? It doesn't necessarily have to be on the football field and related, but tell us, who were some of your friends in ninth grade and some of those memories? Because I love hearing those stories.
I remember there was Shane Wood, Robbie Arnold, Don Jordan. I don't know if you remember Crazy Don.
Yeah.
There was him. That was the ones that was kind of the nucleus of the ones that came with us from Girard to Northview. And those guys really made it. Chris Lee. Oh my goodness. I didn't go to school with him at Girard.
Yeah, he came from HA.
Right, but I'd met him through football.
Yeah.
And thought, what a guy this is. It was so much fun. I mean, you couldn't help but there was no other way to. If you were going to be around Chris, you were going to laugh, whether you wanted to or not.
Still do.
I'm sure. I've lost touch with Chris. I do see Shane every now and then. Lost touch with Don. Hadn't seen him or heard from him in years. Best I know, I think the last I heard he was over around Mobile somewhere. But yeah, like I said, I do get to still see Shane. I saw Shane about 6 months ago at a restaurant here in Dothan. Him and his wife were eating, and so it was good to see him and good to reconnect with him for a little while. Yeah. And I still see Mike Lewis. You remember Mike? Mike didn't play football, but he was one of our friends, and we hung out with Mike a lot. Yeah. But it was great to see those guys. When I get to see them, and I look forward to seeing them again soon, hopefully.
Absolutely. Well, Tim, we get through that ninth grade year, and like I said, if I remember correctly, we won more games than we lost. I had no clue that 10th grade year we would have an outstanding JV team, and then 12th grade year, of course, we would win the state championship. I knew we had great athletes, but that doesn't always tell the picture of success. But we had great coaches. Ninth grade coaches set the foundation, and coaches Johnson, Hicks, Andrews, Griffin, Tribute, you name it, helped to just create such a magical senior year for us. But I don't want to jump ahead, but going back to ninth grade, I want to go into baseball season. Coach Bubba Johnson led the Northview program for many, many years. He was at Dothan High when I think they won the state title several years before Northview formed. Then he came over and headed up the baseball program, and he had a very good program. And if you remember, when we were ninth graders, we had folks like Barry Hightower in a couple of years ahead of us. And as we all know, Barry ended up signing with the Mets. I think it maybe drafted around the 4th round or so, and had just a wonderful high school career. But Bubba, from a baseball standpoint, really, I think set the bar very high for the baseball program. Share a little bit about those experiences early on with baseball.
One of the things that really stands out is, like you said, is Coach Johnson. Now they have 18 different coaches, and they have 2 coaches dedicated to the JV and 2 coaches dedicated to the varsity. Coach Johnson did it all, man. He was the ninth grade coach, he was the JV coach, and he was the varsity coach. There was no in between. And a lot of days, you would see him. He would split his time between the groups that was out working out, doing whatever we needed to do to make ourselves better baseball players. And that just blew my mind because I was used to having, 2 coaches that told me exactly what to do every day. He didn't operate that way. He'd tell you what to do, and he expected you to do it. And if you didn't, you paid for it. It wasn't a bad thing. I mean, he just made sure that we did what we were supposed to do.
Tim, I don't remember there ever being an assistant coach.
I don't either.
To me, the closest to an assistant coach was Wes Whitfield. And he was just a couple of years older than us and was the catcher.
Yeah, that's right. But he was a good coach too now.
He-
You know, Wes is
he
coaching here now. He's at I think he's over at Slocum coaching now. He's a
Yeah.
baseball coach over
I
there.
was just getting ready to say he's still involved in baseball in such a great way. And guys, I'm talking with Tim Bright. We're back in the early 80s. We're reliving our ninth grade year of football and some baseball. Tim, one of the most disgusting things that I remember was a tradition that thankfully I never let them subject me to, was getting tossed into that runoff creek or whatever, it's sewage. I don't know what it was that was behind the batting cages. You remember what I'm talking about?
I remember vividly.
Oh boy, that was you. At least my ninth grade year, I lived in fear of being too close or getting around too many of the varsity guys to be picked up, and all of a sudden you find yourself in the middle of that swampy nastiness.
Yeah. I found myself there. It wasn't a fun thing. I was down there with me and Scott. We had me and Scott Powell had gone down to take some extra BP, and 5 seniors showed up. Yeah, that was all it wrote for me.
Yeah, I was going to say there wasn't
Greg
much.
Cooper, Blake Hall. I can't remember who else. I remember those two distinctly. They put me in the creek, but once it was done, it was over with. It was okay then.
Yep. I don't know who started that awful tradition, but hopefully they don't do it anymore. But knowing in today's society and the way high school and all that, they don't have initiations maybe like that. But one of the things that I always regretted is that during our time, the baseball field was not developed for competition play.
Right.
We could barely even have practices there. We all had to go across town back to Northcutt Field where we played our games for our practices.
Yep.
And I guess I didn't mind it that much because that was a neighborhood where I lived, not too far.
Right.
But it would have been pretty cool because I know for many years afterward, at least Gabe Gross and some of those helped to pave the way, literally and figuratively, for them to have on-campus baseball stadium.
Yes.
Tim, all we had was the batting cages back there, and then a pretty crude baseball field. Do you remember any of that?
Yeah, the baseball field was, like I said, in the springtime, the hole down there, the pit, whatever it was, became the baseball field. And we took ground ball, and I thought, to myself, if we can pick up ground balls and catch ground balls off of this, this is going to be nothing when we get on a real field,
That's right. That's right.
It was dreaded. I mean, it was, like you said, it was a makeshift baseball field. I remember they did have beside the cage, there was a mound that was pretty accurate. I'm not going to say it was exact specs, but it was pretty accurate. And that's where the pitchers and catchers were at every day. And being a catcher, that's where I ended my day. It started my day and ended my day. Was down there with the pitchers and catchers.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit of the dynamics. When you're at a 6A high school, when we started, we were 4A because that's all there was in Alabama. But in 1984, they transitioned up to 6A. And now the current high school, Dothan High, is a 7A school for this upcoming year for sports competitions. But when you're one of the biggest schools and around, our competitors are our conference, if you will, our area was always Dothan High, Enterprise, and Ozark. And during our years, and I know it changed over many years later, but back then, what was your impression about how the coaches felt about you playing multiple sports throughout the year? Were they receptive to it? Did you get any flack about going from football to baseball? How was that dealt with?
I did initially. Coach Parrish called me in his office my 10th grade year. He called me in his office and he said, we had gone out for, it was my 9th grade year, the spring of my 9th grade year. Spring training was coming up. We were still in the middle of baseball. I went to him because I didn't know how that worked. So I went to him and I said, Coach, we're still playing baseball. What do we do? He said, well, when you get through a baseball practice, you come see me at the football field. We'll still be there. Okay. So, the first couple of times, and our season ended towards the first part of that week, I think. But come Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever day it was, okay, you're Coach Parrish's now. And Coach Parrish told me, he said, you go with Coach Griffin. I said, yes, sir. Didn't ask any questions. I wasn't that fast. I thought, why am I with his backs? I got to outrun Robbie Arnold, and there's no way I can outrun Robbie Arnold. Yeah. And so I went over to Coach Griffin and I said, Coach Griffin, I said, Coach Parrish has sent me over here to you. He said, I'll make a defensive back out of you then. Well, little did I know he meant that. Yeah. And man, I thought he was going to kill me. the first day I went home, I was a rag doll. I mean, I had ran those ropes. We had ran side to side, up and back, looking over our shoulder, turned sideways, looking back at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
That ended my career in football. I thought, there's no way, if he's going to kill me, if I'm going to die on a sports field, it's going to be on a baseball field.
Well, so many of Coach Griffin's players had track backgrounds and that track mentality. And I know that he incorporated a lot of those workouts and mind preparation drills and those and so forth. And I thank goodness I never made it down there. I wouldn't have lasted myself. But Tim, I want to welcome Mark Reeves, one of our classmates.
Hey, Mark.
Welcome Matthew Humphrey and some other folks who are watching. I'm with Tim Bright. But Tim, I remember that spring of ninth grade year. By this point, I was playing varsity level of baseball. And I remember Coach Johnson saying, and I bet he denies this, I don't want you to go see Coach Parrish until the baseball season is over. So I always just kind of skirted whenever I saw Coach Parrish, and I would get a phone call, Omberg, where you at? It's like, how do I deal with this? But anyway, you're right. Those coaches became a little territorial during their seasons, but that really was more for them to work out. It was, put a 14, 15, 16-year-old in the middle of something like that.
But coaches now, they don't frown on that near as much as they used to.
Yeah.
They seem, and of course now a lot of parents are forcing their kids to pick one sport or the other. And, I'm not sure if that's good or bad. I did force my son, my only son, he's out of the 4 kids, he's one of the middle. But I did force him to make a choice. And the reason I did that was because I could see that he was not excelling at baseball, which broke my heart, but he was excelling at football. And I told him, I said, it's time for you to choose a sport. I said, you're not that good at baseball, but you're a very good football player. I said, and I think you can do something with yourself if you'll apply yourself. And I forced him to do that. And I look back and I think I should have never forced him to do it. I should have let him be a kid and have a good time.
Well, how old was he at that time, Tim?
He was 14 years old.
So he would have been in ninth grade, eighth grade?
He was in the ninth grade. And it's weird, Bernard, because he was in the ninth grade and he was starting on varsity.
Where was he in high school?
This was at Headland High School, which I know that doesn't sound like a big deal at Headland High School, and it's not really, but they were facing some guys that could really play football. They were making the playoffs almost every year, and they were able to. And like I said, he was phenomenal. He was a center and a defensive lineman, and the kid had some footwork that I'd never seen before. And I told him, I said, you got good footwork. I think you can do better at football than you can at baseball.
His dad was a catcher who had some pretty decent footwork himself, so he probably came by pretty honestly.
I don't know where he got the footwork from, but I don't think I gave it to him.
We'll take a little more credit than that. I know you're a pretty humble dude, but I'm sure he came by it that way. But you're right. It's, back then, as opposed to in the last couple of decades, it was really more about playing, at least from my experience, playing the sport of the season. We didn't have extended baseball seasons that really went beyond all-stars. We didn't have travel ball back in the day. I guess there was that, but I never participated in anything like that. And my basketball career ended in ninth grade, so it was just baseball and football. But I know that I've heard and read many sports medicine doctors talking about the best athletes or the most developed through their career played multiple sports because it's too easy to just get burnt out. But I think you're right. If your heart's not in one sport and you're just going through the motions, or you really have reached your pinnacle with that particular sport, maybe it is time to transition to the sport that you really do excel at. And I want to head back now to spring of ninth grade, going into 10th grade, and you were playing DB with Coach Griffin, and that spring before our 10th grade year. Take us through that time period and your football career at that point.
Well, I was excited when I first went out with Coach Griffin because Coach Griffin was always moving around. He was always talking to the guys. He was always encouraging. He was a great coach. Knew a lot about the defensive back position that I didn't come to realize right away, but I realized it before I got out from under him. But as far as the one thing that really sticks out in my mind with him was, I don't know if you remember, he had those ropes and those metal poles.
Oh yeah.
He didn't want you touching those ropes. It didn't matter what you did. Don't touch those ropes. And if you touch those ropes, you started all over again. Well,
It had to be clean. It had to be clean.
That's right. Yeah, everything he wanted, and he would run that drill with you for hours if you had to keep you from touching his ropes. And so it became a joke with all of us. Don't touch the ropes. Don't touch the ropes. But it was not a joke to him at all. But I learned a lot, not just from the coaching standpoint, but as a mentor and as a man from that coaching staff. I still have a good reputation. Not reputation. I'm sorry. I still have a good rapport with Coach Parrish. Talk to him a lot. We conversate quite often. He and I kind of lost touch for several years, but then we kind of got back together. And then there was Coach Cleveland. I don't get to talk to him because he moved back over to where he came from, I believe. I think he's over at Wright. Is that where he's at?
Yes, I think he's in the Mobile area, and also has a Saturday morning sports radio show that he's had for many years.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I was living up in Greenville, Alabama, I could actually pick up his station there. You could listen to him doing Friday night football.
Yeah,
and it's neat to hear his voice on the football on the radio, listening to football with him. But Coach Tribb, those guys, all those coaches, Coach Hicks, I ended up being in a hunting club with Coach Hicks and became real good friends with him. I mean, not just coach and player type relationship, but we became actual friends. And I met a whole different side of him that I didn't know existed. And it was great to see that side. It's kind of like Coach Parrish. I met the side of him that everybody don't get to see, and that's the other side of the coach. I got to see them. I got to meet the man, and that's a lot.
That says so much, Tim, for their character. That says so much for who they were toward us as high school student athletes, and then later as adults, and welcomed you into whatever their circles were, and treated you, and as they have many others, as their peers, as their equals in society. And I've never heard of any of these coaches, any of these men who we played for, that didn't treat people fairly. And as you mentioned, so many life lessons that I'm sure you've instilled with your children. I know I've instilled with mine. And even now, there are things in everyday life that you could probably, if you think back about your last 2 or 3 days, there's probably been an occasion or two that something has popped up that you learned from those early years of high school sports and middle school sports.
There has. It's funny that you say that because my son was going through a rough year, his 10th, 11th, between 10th and 11th grade. And I used a lot of the same euphemisms that Coach Parrish had used to try to motivate, us on the football field. And, of course, he didn't listen to all of them, but if 1 or 2 of them stuck with him, I felt like that was a good thing. Because Coach Parrish gave me a lot of advice for life, not just football, but for life.
Now, did you ever find yourself using, did you ever say Sam Hill or any of those?
That and John Brown, both.
That's right. That's right. There's so many of them. That's one of the things I'm going to post in the upcoming days. I want folks, and this is not to make fun of Coach Parrish, this is to make fun with Coach Parrish. That man had more sayings on the sports field in lieu of cursing of any person I've ever heard. But
you better not catch you cursing either.
Say it again.
I said, you better not catch us out there cursing either.
That's right. That's right. But it's Sam Hill and John Brown were 2 of the ones that we heard the most. And I want to meet those 2 men wherever they may be or learn more about them. But Tim, let's keep going with our sports career in high school. Take us through now into 10th grade. Where are you from a sports standpoint?
Playing baseball. I actually transferred from Northview in my 10th grade year. Went to a private school. Believe it or not, I played football and baseball there because I didn't know at the time that when I was being signed up for that by my parents, that they had agreed for me to play 2 sports. That was part of my going there was, to give them a break on the tuition. Tim's going to play 2 sports. Wow. So I played again. I was playing football again and playing baseball, even though my heart was in baseball. Believe it or not, that 10th grade year, we had a decent team. We went to the playoffs. The 11th grade year, we had a really good team. We went all the way to the finals. In fact, we played in the championship game for that, and we lost it by 1 run. The kid that pitched against us had already been drafted by the Dodgers. He was their #1 draft pick that year.
Wow. Now, Tim, which high school? Where did you transfer to?
I transferred to Ashford Academy. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and when you transferred to Ashford Academy, I know you still kept many of your friendships from Dothan, but you also added a whole bunch of friendships at Ashford Academy. Did your worlds ever collide during that time period?
You know, they really didn't. It wasn't until probably the 12th grade year that the world started to mingle. And then after got, after they really got, because I didn't really know those people. Most of those kids have been going to school their whole lives together in that one little school. And when I say little school, and it's funny because my wife laughs at me because, we'll be talking to somebody and I say, well, how'd you do in high school? I said, well, I graduated in top 10 in my class. And they just kind of stand back and look. Well, there wasn't but 12 of us in the class, so.
Awesome.
I could have been number 10, but that was at the bottom of my class.
So when you transferred to Ashford Academy and you're playing football, what were your positions that you played?
I played linebacker there as well. That was that kind of stuck with me, I guess, because I didn't have the finesse that you guys had to play quarterback and running back and those kind of things. I love to hit people. It didn't bother me. I don't know if that was a good or bad thing. I look back on it now, it probably wasn't so good because I have lots of aches and pains that I probably wouldn't have had I not played those positions. But played that until I graduated. I actually tried my hand at basketball my 11th grade year, and that was a disaster. I don't know what in the world made me think I could play basketball because
probably a coach leaning on you. You had some height, small school. I get it.
And what was so weird about that school was, I was used to, and this is so funny, Bernard. I walked in, I had typing at Northview, and when I transferred, they offered a typing class at Ashford Academy. I walked in and sat down, and we're sitting there waiting for the teacher to come in, and she said, all right, begin. Well, at Northview, we didn't begin. When she said begin, we cut the typewriter on. I'm looking for the button to cut the typewriter on. I'm looking all around, and these guys are they're flying. I'm like, and so the teacher stops and she goes, they're not electric. And I was like, oh, okay. I was used to having electric. I stepped back 20 years in time.
Yeah.
That was my very first real memory of that school. But I know that doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about. I just thought it was funny.
Oh, it's very, very funny. But I want to talk about the collision of your Northview friendships and your Ashford Academy friendships. Where would they have collided with you in whatever you were doing in high school?
Actually, Bernard, it was at parties. We all ended up at the same parties together sometimes. Some good, some not so good. I had some parties that I went to that I probably don't want to talk about, and then there were some that I just absolutely can't wait to tell the stories about. But that goes in any circles that you run with. But that's how it all started. Because like I said, by the time I was in the 11th grade, I had gotten to know the people I was going to school with. Didn't realize we actually had some of the same friends. Yeah. Because of playing rec league ball. They didn't have a real rec league in Ashford, so to speak. So a lot of those kids played in Dothan. Yeah. They had formed friendships with other people that we had gone to school with that I didn't know. And then I'd say, how do you know so-and-so? Oh, we played baseball together. We played football together, that kind of thing. So it was kind of neat to because I didn't, I grew up in Dothan. The only people I knew was the people I went to school with. I didn't know people in Midland City. I didn't know people in Ozark.
Yeah, that was only through sports, mainly through summer league baseball, competing against other guys. And that's how I got to know people from other parts of the city in the metro area. Well, metro area, that sounds like it's a big city, but from Houston County.
Right.
But Tim, did you continue to play baseball and football all the way through high school?
I did. I played up until I graduated. Our 11th grade year, that was the year we had the absolute best team we ever had. I think we lost 3 ball games the whole year. Wow. And we played a tough schedule. We played a lot. We played 40-something games. We were playing 2 games a day for weeks at a time. And I don't know how we did it. Some of them, because private school wasn't sanctioned the same way.
Right.
Public schools were sanctioned, so we could pitch the same guy 3 days later. It was little did we know we were killing each other, not just each other, but these pitchers especially.
Well, they were probably throwing 200 pitches a day at times, or up to something like that.
That was one thing that blew my mind, Bernard. Whenever I got there, the same coach coached baseball, football, and basketball, and didn't have an assistant. Yeah. Whenever he coached baseball, he'd pick one of us to coach first base. So we tried out there and we coach first base, no helmet, just a cap. Now you have to have a helmet. Even the coach has to have a helmet on now. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, because of some tragic injuries and deaths that have occurred at different levels of baseball. Well, Tim, let's switch back for just a few minutes. We got a little bit of time left, and I Sure appreciate you sharing your journey with us. And guys, we're talking with Tim Bright, where Tim was a high school and middle school teammate and classmate of mine, played baseball and football together. But Tim, I want to talk just a little bit about when you left Northview and you came over to Ashford Academy. That's tough switching high schools. It's tough leaving your teammates. It's tough leaving your friends and even teachers who you may have bonded with a little bit. Was that transition for you? Was it tough, or was it something that you took in stride and just figured it out pretty quickly?
It was real tough. I didn't. I kind of went into a little shell, so to speak. And
Mhm.
believe it or not, and you know me well as anybody I know,
Mhm.
I love to talk to people. That was one of my things I love to do. You know, I love to be social. When I got there, it killed that. I didn't talk to people. In fact, my parents were extremely surprised because they had trouble with me from the time I was in kindergarten until the time I left Northview. Me running my mouth all the time in class. Teacher said, "Oh, he's perfect. He never says a word. He never bothers anybody." But I didn't know anybody to talk to. I didn't have anything in common with those people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but you know, by the 11th, 12th grade year, by between 11th and 12th grade year, that started to click a little better. But
Mhm.
the first few months I was at Ashford Academy, and then my first few months of my 11th grade year,
Mhm.
it was different. Like I said, I didn't know them that well. Those guys had basically they were family. They were kind of like we all were. They'd gone to school together their whole lives.
Mhm.
So it was a big change for me. And not only that, but you know, people talk about private schools and how well funded they are. Most private schools at that time were not funded like they are now.
Yeah, it's nothing like today. And I know the Dothan area, they've had so many private schools pop up over the last, well, now 25 years. And I know that's a bigger conversation for another day about how the demographics and the student populations at the city schools or the public schools have all changed as a result of the private schools gaining so much
Sure.
momentum. But before we get out of here, Tim, I want you to share a little bit of some of those stories you can and do want to share away from the sports field, away from campus, knowing the statute of limitations is long run. You can use alias names, including Eric McAllister's and anybody else that you want to share. But those are some of sports aside, those away from campus and away from our parents, memories and experiences with our friends are some of the very best of high school and can be some of the very worst of high school.
Yeah. Yeah. One that really stands out in my mind, and Eric can appreciate this as much as anybody else, but I don't know if you remember Cliff Owen.
Of course.
He played with us. He's deceased now. Him and myself and Eric and Mark Smith. I don't know if you remember Mark. Mark played center on one of your teams.
He was my center.
We were all really close. We went to church together. You know, played baseball together all of our lives.
Yeah.
But we were riding around the North Side Mall. You know how big that was at the time.
Oh yeah.
We had stopped at Hardee's for somebody to go use the restroom,
Uh-huh.
and we all get back in the truck, and somehow or another Cliff had ended up in the driver's seat of Eric's truck, and we were in the back of the truck. Me and Eric and I think Mark were in the back of the truck,
Uh-huh.
and Clifton and Eric were still trying to get in the truck, and Clifton saw somebody he knew and took off in the truck. And as Eric's falling out, he's reaching through the window trying to grab him and stop him from putting the truck in drive and driving off. And Eric fell off that ground. I thought he was going to kill Cliff. That was and Mark was like, "Oh, we got to leave. We got to just leave." We just abandoned ship. We just took off and left, and there was nobody there but Eric. Eric just left standing there, and we had all jumped out of the truck and ran, and Cliff still driving off in the truck. That was the one thing that really stood out in my mind. But I'll tell you something else and it was on the field but off the field. I had never seen anybody eat Big Macs like Lonnie Mathis could eat a Big Mac.
Yeah.
Lonnie Mathis, he ate we were in the 9th grade, and Lonnie Mathis ate 3 Big Macs on a road trip. And I'll never forget that as long as I live. And he wasn't a big guy. I mean, he wasn't that much bigger than we were.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those things that just stood out in my mind, and I'll never forget it as long as I live.
I do have an on-field story about Clifton I wanted to share. Clifton's junior year, he threw a perfect game in high school.
I remember that.
And the most nervous I've ever been in a baseball game, even including when we played the semifinals against Fairhope, my 10th grade year, was the same year. A ball was hit late in the game directly over my head at shortstop. and it was kind of in that no man's land where the center fielder, left fielder, and shortstop usually collide. And I remember catching the ball over my shoulder and falling down, and I caught it. But at first, when you hit the ground, you don't know necessarily if the ball is going to scoot out. And this was probably fourth or fifth inning, and everyone was staying away from Clifton. You know how you do in a no hitter,
Yeah.
but you don't want to be that guy who messes up the game.
You're right.
And I just remember catching that, thinking, well, that's about as hard as the most difficult thing you could ever do. So maybe Clifton's going to get it. And to his credit, he completed that no hitter. But I'll always remember that. It's one of my most fondest baseball sports memories. That's for sure.
I'll tell you one that's kind of way off the field memory of mine for baseball. I don't know if you know it or not, and I probably didn't share this with a lot of people, but I called high school baseball for a few years, and was involved in a no hitter, a perfect game for a kid out of Rehoboth.
Wow.
We were calling the game, and we were going into the fifth inning, and the catcher comes out and he said, "Hey, Blue." I said, "Yeah, buddy." He said, "You know, he's got." I was like, "Don't say it. Don't say it." I said, "Just leave it alone. Just, stay away and don't talk to me about that." And he's like, "I know." He said, "But I got to tell somebody." I said, "Keep it to yourself." I said, "Man," I said, "that's superstition of baseball. Do not discuss that, and stay away from him in that dugout, and keep everybody else away from him too."
That's right. That's
We
right.
finished that game, and the kid had a perfect game. He faced a minimum number of batters and threw very few pitches. I can't remember exact pitch count now, but I was so happy to be a part of that with that kid. And this kid had never played baseball before in his life. This was his first year playing baseball. He walked up to Coach, I don't know if you know Coach Hyde not Coach Hyde, I'm sorry, Coach Ring from Rehoboth at the time. He's not there anymore. I think he's an assistant principal somewhere now. But he walked up to Coach Ring at tryouts and said, "Coach, I want to play baseball." He said, "Well, have you ever had any experience?" He said, "No, never played baseball before in my life." He said, "Well, you got one shot." He said, my tryouts are over with." He said, "But since you came late," he said, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to do this." He said, "But you got to go home and cut your hair." The kid had an afro out here. It was just huge afro. He said, "But you have to go home and cut your hair." This Coach Ream was telling me this after the game. We were talking about it. And he said, "I wanted to see how bad he played, who wanted to play baseball." He said, he came back the next day and his head was shaved. He said, "And I told him, get on the mound and throw me some pitches." And he got on the mound. He said, the guy was throwing gas. He said, and he was accurate. He said, so I told him, "Okay, I'm gonna give you a shot." And he put him on, and the kid played that year and one more year. He was a junior that year and one more year. And I think he ended up playing junior college baseball somewhere.
That's fantastic.
It was phenomenal.
Wow. And you got to call that game. That's
I did. And I was so happy to be back behind that plate that night.
Man, what a sports memory. Well, Tim, we've got 2 or 3 minutes before we get out of here. And I sure appreciate you sharing all these stories with me and with our audience, and just reliving just these memories. And this is what these conversations are about. It's just remembering our childhood and remembering just simpler times. And we've talked a little bit about some of those life lessons you either incorporate into your life now or you shared with your children along the way. And I guess if somebody's watching this and doesn't know me or you, but happens to watch this, and we're just talking about high school sports, what are some things that you would tell if you had a child now who is coming up through and is getting into high school and wants to play sports? What kind of things would you share with them at this point?
Well, I'm gonna tell you one thing that Coach Parrish told me that has stuck with me my entire life, and I've used it multiple times with my children. Just he and I sitting in the office one day talking, and he said, "Bright," that's what he always called me. Never called me by my first. As far as I knew, I didn't have a first name whenever he was concerned. He said, "Bright, I got something to tell you." I said, "Yes, sir. What's that?" He said, "I don't care what you do in life." He said, "Be great at it." He said, "Be the best that you can be." He said, "I don't care if you're a garbage man." He said, "Be the best doggone garbage man that you can be." He said, "That's the only advice I can give you that's going to help you later in life." He said, "But if there's one thing I want you to stick with you, I want you to understand that no matter what you choose to do, be the best at what you're doing." And that has stuck with me my entire life, Bernard.
Well, it's, Tim, that's as good as it gets, because it doesn't matter if it's on the sports field or in your profession or in your relationships, whatever it is, give it your all, give it your best, because then, at least I would think, if it doesn't work out for you, if you fail at whatever it is or it goes away, you won't have regrets by saying, I should have just done better.
I agree, Bernard. You couldn't have said it better.
Yeah. Well, Tim, we've got Eric McAllister says he loves you, brother.
Hey, B.
Mark Reeves remembers one of Coach Parrish's sayings, bird head. Bird head. That's right. Thank you,
Bird
Mark.
heads.
Yep. Well, guys, this has been an awesome conversation with Tim Bright tonight. I appreciate everybody who has dropped in, or maybe you catch us on the replay. Tim, thank you for sharing your journey with us tonight, bud. It's been so great catching up with you.
Well, thank you, Bernard. Like I said, I appreciate you doing this. I know it takes a lot of time out of your life, and I appreciate you doing it. It just brought back a lot of good memories for me over the last 6 to 8 months for sure.
Well, that's great. And Tim, I certainly wish you continued good luck, good health, and I hope to break bread with you sometime when I come down to the Dothan area sometime soon.
Sounds great, man. I look forward to it too, Bernard. Just get up with me anytime and we'll find something to do.
That's right. That's right. Well, guys, every Wednesday night, almost every Wednesday night, we try to come to you at 7 p.m. Central with conversations with Cougars, and I've got a whole bunch more Cougars lined up from all different decades. So please keep coming back and keep putting into the comments, post your photos, videos, paraphernalia, memorabilia, anything you got, posters, jackets, whatever it is. We're just trying to share memories of Northview High School and the football program and just some great memories. You guys continue to be safe. Have a good rest of your week. Take care.